Yo, what's up, everyone? It is August 1st. Just still dark outside. We got here. I left around 4:30. Got here around 5. See here, it's about 5:15 right now. So the sun is starting to set, but it's a little bit still pitch dark. I mean, on the phone you could see it better, but to the naked eye, it's still very dark. So just still getting set up right now. Got the Daiso holder set up. Got my chair set up. I'm gonna get my rods ready, but yeah, it's kind of hard to get your rods set up when you really can't see. Okay, everyone, I'll talk to you later. Bye. Yo, what's up, everyone? So I finally got my poles up. 5:42. Takes a bit of time to get everything set up, especially when you can't see anything in the pitch dark. I mean, I have a light, but it's nothing that you could see a whole lot of. We're starting to see some of the fish now that the sun is setting. We'll start to see if these lines start to get anything. So what am I using today? I'm using Shimano FX. I think it's an 8-footer and a Centron Light 5,000, 4,000 or 5,000. It was the highest one, I know. So this is a Cast King. Right here we have a Ozark Trail. Ooh, I found myself a weight, 2 weights, yay! And with a Zebco salt. Yep, Zebco 808 salt. I think I brought, I'm not sure if I brought the 888. I think I did. But yeah, it's good to get back here. It's been a few days. After Sunday's remarkable weekend, actually, you know, with 17 caught, my personal best. Here we are now. And it's a new clean slate. Let's see how we do this weekend. So one of the reasons why I came early is because now we are during a time when it gets super hot. I'm talking about like 110 degrees or higher. So you have to make it out here early. Unfortunately, you can't really see anything, so dark. So you just have to do what you can between 5 and 9 a.m. in this river. Let's look at things right now. We're starting to see the current move towards that way. But yeah, we'll see how things go. So yeah, we're starting to see the fish now. Good. You can see there's probably shadows right here. We'll see if it catches anything. Don't know. We'll find out. I'm using another bait here. I'm using that bait trap for this one, and using the usual Kumho spring carp in this one. But hopefully we catch something. Yo, what's up everyone? We got the KO6000 now on. I have it on an Ozark Trail grit stick catfish rod. We'll see how it goes. I could have put it on a better rod, but I figured, let's just do this for now. Hopefully we get some bites. This one right here, we got the Centron Light 5000. Hey, good morning everyone. So it's Sunday. I have my flashlight out because it's still pitch black out here. The sun is starting to come up. Probably give it 15 more minutes, but still way too early. So I can't really see anything. But I'm gonna try to see if I could get something cast out right now. Yeah, it's kind of hard to see. You see something swimming there, but I think it's a duck. I don't know. Okay, I'm gonna start getting things ready. Okay, so I was able to get my flashlight here so we could see. Was able to get some casts, unlike yesterday where it was just pitch black and I couldn't see anything. Even though I had like a tiny flashlight, I needed something bigger. So we do have the 2 out. So after yesterday's dismal day because of the heat, this time I have the EXO 6000, and this one's using an Ozark Trail catfish pole. This is back on the Billings 8000 with a Berkley Big Game. Berkley Big Games I absolutely love. They're cheap, about $30. They're pretty much, I look at them like an ugly stick, but cheaper than an ugly stick. So just such a great deal for the price. I just wish they made an 8-foot bait caster, but they don't. They only make 7-footers. But they do make, many different sizes of the spinning reel version. Well, the spinning reel is 8. What am I talking about? Yeah, this is the 8-footer. I'm fine. But the other, when it comes to the bait casting version, yeah, I wish they could go a little larger. Another, like an 8-footer there. But for the most part, yeah. Sun is now finally coming up. I couldn't see the water conditions, but now I'm seeing it. It looks pretty calm. So I'm not sure if we're going to get any bites like this. I hope. I casted it right near vegetation area. So yeah, sometimes early in the morning you really can't see what you're going to get. There's no one here right now but me. So, but yeah, one of the things that's hard about August is the heat. There are areas, in the United States, of course, where you have a lot of trees, a lot of vegetation, and you just have to get in the right place. Like right now, this is a good time to come because it's cooler, but it doesn't mean necessarily you're gonna catch a lot of fish because the water temperatures. I remember yesterday morning pulling some things up with the weeds. And when I was pulling the weeds apart, I was like, wow, these weeds are hot. So that can mean, you can imagine the water temperature is probably not the best. So, but yeah, this is how it is, August, right? So it is what it is. So we'll see how catching fish goes today. Yesterday was like, again, it's a rare moment in the morning where I don't catch anything after 3 weeks of great fishing. It's sometimes surprising to me when there's just no bites at all, and even right now there's just nothing. Usually by now, first cast, you hear a tun, 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 and the bell's going. But yeah, there really isn't anything right now. I'm hoping today is better than yesterday, though. Knock on wood. Okay, everyone, you take care. I'll see you later. Bye. now that we can start to see and the sun is almost up, check this out. We couldn't see it this morning, but looks like whoever did some night fishing, they had some major encounter with the weeds, the vegetation. My goodness, that is insane to the membrane. They must have had some major issues yesterday. Jeez, look how
we're fighting multiple wars. Artificial intelligence is coming, and that could take our jobs, or our kids could be friends with.
Yo, what's up everyone? It is now about 6:15. We did catch this one right here on the EXO, but man, that was crazy. That was really crazy. So what happened was, when it caught the carp, perhaps this thing, because it was so dark when I put it in, I thought it was all the way in the rod holder, but it wasn't. So it was pulling, and it pulled the fishing pole towards the water. I had to really jump in there. And this is one thing where I probably got lucky that there are some weeds, is that it caught, you know, with the reel. But man, hopefully nothing is destroyed with this. I'm sure it's gonna be fine. Probably have to do some oiling and cleaning, but since it got submerged, so we'll see. But for the most part, this thing did its job. It caught its fish, but again, it's still slow morning. Usually by now I'd catch 4, but as you can see, the current is primarily towards there, near that tree, which I probably should go in that area. It's just a riprap. You know, dealing with a riprap could be really, really crazy. What the hell is that? Is that a target? People shouldn't be doing shooting around here. Hold on. What's up, everyone? Well, the day is kind of dismal like the previous days. Hardly any bites. Well, I got a few today, better than yesterday where there was none. But we got one fish, and we'll see how things go for the remainder of the day. It's just not the best location. I think I should move to another location. Yeah, just mainly carp, but these last 2 days have been not as, these last 3 weeks were great. Yesterday and today, yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's not that, it hasn't been that great. We'll see if we get any bites. It's been rather quiet though. It's almost time for me to change out the rods for a different one.
Deeply, Lincoln, who is not like an outwardly pious guy, like he's not someone who went to church every Sunday, but essentially you have to kind of look at it in terms of Lincoln's own wrestling with the issue of slavery, and then Lincoln's own wrestling with the idea of what does God intend here. Because Lincoln starts out as relates to slavery, and like any politician in his day, this is a dominant issue. He just wants to restrict slavery's spread in the territories, but kind of leave it alone where it is. And when he's elected president in 1860, he says, if I can save the Union without freeing a single slave, that's what I would do. Then he frees the slaves after the Battle of Antietam, but it's kind of framed as a wartime necessity. But as he's going on through the Civil War, he was really wrestling with the question of like, why is this happening? Why is something so apocalyptic and so violent and so awful happening to us? And he used to write these meditations to himself that how baffling it was to Lincoln that both North and South invoked kind of the same God to justify their cause. And the South did invoke religion and the Bible to justify slavery. They found instances in the Bible that suggested that somehow slavery was legitimate, just as the North would invoke the Bible to say slavery was wrong. And Lincoln is beginning to realize that the war and the scale of it has to be about something more than just protecting a political union. And so by 1864, Frederick Douglass, the activist, who's became pragmatic, he's meeting with Lincoln, but he's been disappointed by Lincoln in past meetings. But he meets with Lincoln in 1864, and Lincoln doesn't think he's going to get reelected at that point because we have not had battlefield breakthroughs yet for the North. That came kind of later in 1864. And Lincoln implores Douglass to tell slaves in the South to come north just in case he's not reelected and slavery's brought back. He wants to free as many people as he can. And Douglass detects, oh, something is going on inside of Lincoln. I've never seen him like this before. And then by the time he gets to if he spoke with all the voices of the Hebrew prophets at once, Douglas reacted to it as a religious oration. And then even was able to meet Lincoln that night at the White House, even after he was thrown out of the receiving line for being black. Lincoln let him back in. And when Lincoln asked him what he thought of the speech, Douglas described it as a sacred effort, a religious effort. And so, yeah, I think what it really speaks to is that Lincoln needed to find a higher moral basis for determining the meaning of the war and, frankly, the meaning of the United States. And instead of just saying, again, we're great because we're American and the founding fathers were great and they did everything right, he's saying kind of the opposite. He's saying we really got this wrong at the beginning of this nation. We had to pay the price for that sin. And having paid the price, though, we actually now have an opportunity to forge a just and lasting peace among ourselves, in Lincoln's words. Of course, he did not live much longer after that speech. And in a way, we keep having the same argument. Now, slavery's gone, but then there's segregation, and then, there's a backlash to kind of...
Yo, what's up, everyone? It is about 8 o'clock, Saturday, August 1st. And it's one of those days where there are no bites. I'm looking around and seeing people, and they're not getting the bites either in their different locations. Typically, you can hear people yelling, yeah, I got one. No, I've been out here since like 5 something, so. This is not the way that you want things to go when you're catching fish. It's kind of a dead day. We got the Star Spangled Banner playing in the background right here from the military base. So I'm just surprised, man. There's been like zilch in terms of bites. I mean, you would hear at least something trying to attack the bait, but there really isn't anything. That's why I'm a little surprised by today. After 3 weeks of productive fish catching, I'm a little surprised myself. Usually by now I've caught like maybe close to 6, but 4 to 6. I mean, we still got about 2 hours left, but this is one of those days where you're like, man, I better get at least one fish. If nothing is biting, you just kind of hope that you get one. Kind of dead. Yep, we got the guy. Gosh, I can't believe it. There's a thing that keeps on poking its head up and down in the water back there. Let's see if I could get a... First I thought that was a duck. I don't know. I think I almost fell out there in the water.
To me and other people. But he said, I can no more disown Reverend Wright than I can disown my white grandmother, a woman who loved me, who raised me, but also said racist things that made me cringe. And what he's doing there is, I think he's saying to Americans, actually structural inequality, the education gap, the housing gap, the income gap. But then he talks about the white working class, and I think these lines really struck me today. He said these are people that don't feel particularly privileged by their race. Their jobs have been shipped overseas. Their concerns about crime are dismissed as racism. He's really empathizing with people who would later become, I think, Trump voters. And the reason this kind of connects to the last two questions is that then Obama's making an argument that, hey, look, when we focus on these differences and we allow people to divide us by race or ethnicity, that's why we can't get affordable health care. That's why we can't build a coalition to kind of overcome special interests that stand in the way of progress. So he gets to the policy, he gets to the what at the end of the speech. He's running to make healthcare affordable. He's running to end the war in Iraq. He's running for a number of issues. But just as Roosevelt gave people a sense of a higher purpose, Obama gave people a vision of, hey, what would it be like if we weren't divided by things like race, but in fact chose to see the good in one another, or chose to empathize with one another, or chose to understand the fear that might lead somebody to say something that is offensive to you. And again, I think that the best politicians, and again, I'd say Reagan did this too, are able to give people a sense of a bigger national identity that is shared, and a bigger cause that leads into their agenda, instead of having an agenda that they're just trying to sell to people.
You're listening to the Commonwealth Club of California radio program. Today's guest is Ben Rhodes in conversation with Guy Marzorati. Thank you for joining us for this program, the latest episode of the longest-running radio program in the United States. This program is made possible by the members of Commonwealth Club World Affairs. You can stay in touch with the club, our events, the travel program, and more by subscribing to our email newsletter at commonwealthclub.org/email. And please follow us on social media. Now, back to our program.
Yeah. I want to go back to the For Freedom speech for a second, though, because there's just reading that there was so much that stood out to me as being almost impossible to imagine being today. Both the focus of the speech, I mean, we see addresses to Congress that cover 7 different departments and 10 different initiatives, but also the honesty. Like, there were parts of that speech where, FDR said, well, I'm here to tell you we're failing in this part of defense production, or we're not meeting the goals that I had. Like, what was that? Just, and he built up the trust? Was it the time, the medium? Like, how was he able to level set in that way?
I'm so glad you saw that, and I think it's a great lesson for today, because first of all, it's not unique to that speech. Like, I spent, again, a lot of chapters just telling Ray Roosevelt's story, and the trust he had from Americans is that he leveled with them, so at the height of the Depression, his whole point was like, hey, this is not going well. like let me explain to you just how bad things are. There's not money in the banks, and so he'd already built up a certain trust. This is a guy who will tell you the truth, and he'll explain it to you in language you can understand. That's the kind of fireside chat that he developed using radio, which was a kind of intimate form of communication. But you get to the For Freedom speech, and again, he is there to ask people to write a blank check of support for Britain. And again, like, pretty much making it clear, like, we're going to get involved in this war, and we have to, which was not popular with Americans. I mean, a few months before, that would have been, I don't know what the polls would have been, but it would certainly not have been a majority position. And what I was so struck by in reading that speech is against the onslaught, or whether you're someone who's going to end up probably being drafted and serving. And I think that if you bring it to today, we've lost that art of truth telling in political speech. You know, like people want to put the most positive spin on things, or politicians constantly want to tell you the best version of what they're doing. Or, I mean, Trump is the prices are down. You know, like he'll literally say the
I was
opposite.
trying to imagine like the Fox News story on FDR's speech. It would be like, President admits.
Yeah, President admits. You know, yeah. And that's actually the thing. It's not just on the politicians. I think it's on the rest of us. Like, we should reward truth telling, and we don't. I mean, I actually think more politicians would do it if they weren't so afraid to do it.
Yeah. You know, you as you mentioned, you spent years as a White House speechwriter. The FDR chapter on Four Freedoms is the first time we hear about that as a profession. You meeting with a team of speechwriters. What is the history kind of behind that, and having you know, speechwriters working with electives, with presidents in this way?
It's a great question. So it was interesting going back and picking these speeches. Like, before the 20th century, presidents were not really the leading orators in this country. There were exceptions, Lincoln chief among them, but Lincoln would write his speeches. I mean, he wrote the Gettysburg Address, he wrote the second inaugural address. You know, and actually it's not that surprising because, you know, there's no audio, there's no recorded audio, there's no, obviously, video, and so a speech is something you kind of give to some people in a room and it's reprinted. And actually the great speakers of the 19th century were people like Frederick Douglass or Anna Dickinson, who I have in the book, who are these people who just traveled around the country giving speeches. Like, that was their job. And they give hundreds and hundreds of speeches a year. And they were kind of almost performers. Like, that's not what presidents were. And so there were no White House speechwriters. You know, you get help sometimes from people in your cabinet. You know, like Lincoln, on his first inaugural address, had some help writing the speech from William Seward, his Secretary of State. You know, but the idea that you have a department of the White House that is helping you figure out what to say didn't exist. The first White House speechwriter was in the Harding administration, so after World War I, and it was a guy named Judson Welliver, and I actually know that just because it's such a great name, Judson Welliver. But actually, even then, it was, you know, not coincidentally, by the way, this is the time when radio has been invented. And one of the things I really kind of learned in writing the book is how much technology has shaped how people speak, because I think once presidents were like, oh, wait a second, like, what I say is going to be beamed into households across the country, I better take this more seriously, essentially. And so you start to have this role of White House speechwriter. But then FDR is the first one who truly kind of professionalized it. And he had, at any given time, multiple speechwriters, which has obviously been the case ever since. But he even did things really interesting, like for the Four Freedoms speech, one of the speechwriters on that speech was a guy named Robert Sherwood, who was a Pulitzer Prize-winning playwright. I mean, he was like a hugely accomplished writer. And Roosevelt essentially drafted him in 1940 during his re-election campaign because he knew Sherwood was deeply anti-fascist, and he kind of appealed to his, not just his patriotism, but his desire to help Roosevelt stand up to Hitler, you know? And so suddenly you have not just a professionalization, but an idea that these words, like a president speaks, really matter. And then you get television. And so the words matter even more because that is performance. Like radio is, I need to explain things very clearly. I need to make arguments. I need to maybe have a big vision like the Four Freedoms. But by the time you get to John F. Kennedy and people are watching these speeches, well, that's when you get story. Like, I wanted to be short. I wanted to be an argument, because the best Obama speeches, of which there are many, and I didn't work on all of them, were stories. It was him, again, like there was a formula to the good ones. It was like, how did we get here? Where are we? What does it all mean? Where might we go? And then he tells you where to go. The State of the Union, even under Obama, those were not our best speeches. I mean, so we try to have like a good ending, and we'd have some theme. So we try to make it a story. But you're right. Even under Obama, who I think is the best presidential speaker easily of the 21st century, it started to become, we're gonna have someone up in the box. We're all gonna say, look at John Doe, the hero who 3 weeks ago saved a woman from being hit by a train. I don't want to pick on any woman, but like it was these kind of made-for-TV moments, and then people would heckle him, and that would be a moment, and everybody's counting how many times people stand up and applaud, and did the Republicans applaud or just the Democrats, and there was a kind of dumbing down, frankly, of how people. I mean, if you compare it to like the For Freedom speech, this incredibly dramatic moment where FDR tells America what it needs to do. I think look. I'm not a Luddite. I know we're never going to go back to like FDR, but I do think people are getting a little tired of the kind of cheap theatrics and put downs or applause lines or focus group lines, right? Like bottom up, middle out. Like people can smell inauthenticity, and I think that like the politicians I see starting to connect on the Democratic side, like a John Ossoff or James Tallarico, or are people that are telling stories again and giving people a sense of their motivation. So my hope is actually there's a kind of counter programming to this era we've been through that is emerging.
Yeah, I'm going to get to some audience questions. I did want to ask you if there's any folks in today's landscape that kind of stand out, specifically with the kind of thread you talk about in the book as the ethos of striving and self-improvement. Like people who are tapping into that in their speeches and storytelling. You mentioned Tallarico also.
Yes, there are. Yeah, I'll give you 3 examples that I've been thinking about, who are conspicuously younger Democrats. But so I mentioned Ossoff, and some of these clips have gone viral. But Ossoff is clearly someone who cares, like pays attention to like his speeches, and what he's doing that's working is he's telling a story about what is happening in the country that ties things together. I think the Democratic Party's been stuck for the last decade where it's like, do we talk about democracy issues, things that Trump is doing that threaten democracy, or do we talk about, kitchen table issues as if, these are separate things we have to choose between, like healthcare or authoritarianism or something. And what Ossoff is doing is he's getting up there telling one story. He's saying it's about corruption, that there is a small group of people led by Donald Trump that is basically making the system just work for them. And that's why you cannot afford health care. That's why the prices are too high. That's why inequality is out of control. That's why we're in a war that Americans want to fight. And it seems simple, and it is, but it's actually not easy to do because it ties everything into kind of one story. And if we can solve the corruption and kind of take back the power from this collection of special interests and kind of oligarchs, that will then allow us to have the health care that you can afford and to make the changes in our economy that work for working people. And so what's interesting about Ossoff too is, I mentioned it's going viral, even if people don't watch the whole speech, a speech is where you work out your story. And so if you know your story, the story you're telling to voters, all your other things will be better, right? Your clips will be better, your interviews will be better. Like Obama used to, work on his, through 2007, he was constantly refining his stump speech, the speech he gave every day, such that by 2008, when he'd win these primaries and give these like soaring speeches, well, the reason he could give those is he'd been working on it for a year, and I think people forget that even if like not everybody's going to sit there and watch a 30-minute speech, if you nail it in that speech, all your other communication is going to be better. And I think Ossoff has demonstrated that. I think Tallarico, he's good at that, the why leading to the what, right? His faith compels him to care for his neighbor, which compels his politics. Like, he lets people into his sense of motivation. And another person, is AOC, is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and what she has, it's less the oratory, but it's the demeanor. She has, I think, what I would describe as a fearlessness and a joy in how she speaks when she's at these big rallies with, say, Bernie Sanders, think those three people in different ways, and by the way, different ideological points on the spectrum, are working through a way to communicate in this kind of post-social media age that I think can be effective.
Yeah. Let's get to some audience questions. Someone asked, during your time in the White House, what was the best part of your job? What was the most challenging part of your job?
I don't want to say it's the worst part of the job, but the hardest part of the job was that you were kind of constantly engaging with really difficult and sometimes tragic events. And sometimes tragic events that were beyond your control. You know, we couldn't stop a civil war on the other side of the world, or we obviously couldn't stop gun violence in this country despite really trying hard. And the best part of it were two things. I mean, one was in terms of the function of the job. I loved traveling around the world with President Obama and helping him kind of tell a story about America that people around the world respected and looked up to. When there were those moments where I think Obama was able to break through the smallness of politics, you know, I think about, you know, what he's saying Amazing Grace in 2015 after the shooting at Black Church, and there's a tragic moment, but to see the power of the presidency to give people hope or to heal, those moments matter, and we don't really have them anymore.
Yeah. This question is on your national security advisor hat. Can you share concerns you may have about the current administration's approach to foreign policy and specifically relationships with longtime allied countries?
We don't have time for that. I just highlight a couple of things, though. And one goes out of Roosevelt, identity of the country is tied up in the kind of Christian inheritance and a Christian identity. And that leads Reagan to make arguments around things like the need to outlaw abortion or the need to have prayer in school and all these kind of culture war issues that we can continue to live with and have been pretty predominant in our politics the last few decades. I think that we make a mistake in thinking that this is new or this is being weaponized or this is kind of novel to a few politicians. No, it's actually kind of been this kind of battle over religion, whether you're embracing a kind of religious identity.
Man, what
that
a
is
day, what a day, what a
progressive,
day.
like trying to kind of do what
Okay, we're walking and I'm trying to figure out why is there a freaking target. Hopefully people were not shooting around here. They should be way up there. Oh my gosh, look at that grass right there, those weeds. Obviously, someone was using their freaking target. Aiming for ducks or so. Stupid. You shouldn't be shooting here.
he had to give it a big heat. And so the night before the speech,
Dumbasses. Okay. Look right here. So these people, what the hell were they doing? That is like a large number of weeds. They may have gotten caught, but this is abnormal. I don't know what they were using. That is like an abnormal amount of weeds. They actually pulled the whole fucking front right there. That's so interesting. Hey, what's up everyone? My gosh, it's only 7:35 and it's super hot out here. I am sweating. I feel like I'm burning. It's just, oh my gosh. It kind of sucks during summer because you're really limited to how much time you have. But geez, it's really, it sucks right now. It's hot. Yikes. I know some people, they'll just take the vacation. They'll say, oh, I'll start up again maybe in September or October. So not sure if I want to do that though. Okay everyone, take care. Yo guys, what's up? We got ourselves a catfish, a carp. So far 2 for today. It's only 8 o'clock, but it's so damn hot out here. I don't know how much longer I'm gonna last. You know, you try to come here early as possible, and once around 7:45, it just started toasting out here. So I'm not sure if I could take another 2 or 3 hours of this heat, but I'll talk to you later. Bye.